Please be seated. Can I remind members to put their mobile phones on silent? Can members of the public present please also ensure that their phones are on silent, and if they are filming or recording the meeting, they do so in a way that does not disrupt our council business. Thank you. Now I would like you to all observe a minute's silence, please, for former Mayor of Wakefield, Kevin Barker, and former Councillor Martin Ward. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The first agenda item on the Council summons is to receive apologies for absence. In advance of the meeting, apologies have been received from Councillors Bryan, F. Eptinstall, Garbett, M. Jones, Rowley, Vickers, and Wallace. Councillor Foster has informed me that he will need to leave the meeting at 5:30 p.m, and so Councillor Julie Craig too. Are there any further apologies to be noted? Councillor Any more? Agenda item 2 is members' declarations of interest. Will members declaring an interest please identify themselves and their interests clearly and complete the usual yellow form before the end of the meeting. First, are there any disclosable pecuniary interests to be declared? Are there any other interests to be declared? Thank you. There are no exempt items before us today, so we will move straight on to agenda item 4, which is to receive and confirm the minutes of the full council meeting in January. Are these minutes moved? Are these minutes seconded? All in favour? That is carried. Agenda item 5 is to deal with such announcements as I may decide to lay before council. Colleagues, I would remind you of the slight changes to the fire evacuation arrangements due to the building works to County Hall. Copies of the fire evacuation procedure plans are available from your information in the council chamber and for members of the public attending today. Copies are also available in the public gallery. I ask that you take time to consider these and note that there is no planned fire drill today. Should there be a fire alarm, please follow the instructions of staff and security Our assembly point is the cenotaph. Visitors have also been provided with visitor badges with a summary of information on the back. This information is also available in the public gallery. Please can you hand badges back to officers when you leave the building. Colleagues, this is one of the most important meetings in our municipal year. Please can we treat this with the seriousness it deserves. We can have robust political debate, but let's make sure it stays respectful and within the terms of the Code of Conduct. May I remind Council that in accordance with the relevant regulations, all votes taken today at today's Budget Council will be recorded, including the 2 amendments to the budget proposals. Agenda items 6 and 7 are to consider the Council's revenue, budget and council tax, capital and investment strategy, capital programme and treasury management strategy reports for 26-27. We will take both these items together. Cabinet considered the proposals contained in the reports on 17th of February 2026 and agreed that the recommendations should be submitted to Council for approval. I now call upon the Leader to move the report.
Madam Mayor, can I just raise a point of order, please? Which to do with the guidance note on budget management found in Part 4 of this Constitution, because in any of the documents about to be discussed, I see nothing on the potential revenue implications from the Ridings decision. The Cabinet report sets out a potential £400,000 liability, but there's nothing referred to it in the MTFS update, the budget report, or the Section 25 statement, and I'm just concerned that if we pass it, that might mean we have an unbalanced budget going forward. So I'd just like to clarify whether those points should be explicitly mentioned in any of the budget documents, and if we pass it without those points being in there, if this budget could potentially become unlawful. And I'll just point out that all of us are under a fiduciary duty to set a balanced budget, and it's a code of conduct breach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just consulted with the Statutory Section 151 officer, and he confirms that it's been factored in to the extent that it affects the budget we're about to set now, which is for 26-27. So on the basis of the proposals that the Leader's about to move, it would be a lawful budget.
Usually, whenever there's any implications from previous sort of big capital projects like WX, for instance, they have been specifically itemised in the document. So I just want to confirm, if we do pass this budget and it is lawful, that later down the line Council won't be called upon to cut, that services won't be cut, or there won't be any movement from like reserve budgets or anything, if it is actually factored in.
Again, with your permission, Madam Mayor, the Section 151 officer tells me that the revenue implications were covered in full in the Cabinet report. They have been factored in, and this would be a lawful budget if it is approved.
I now call upon the Leader to move the report.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of Council, members of the public, I'd like to propose our budget for 26-27. Our meeting today comes at an important moment for our Council. In May, everyone across this district has a big choice to make. An experienced Labour team with a strong track record of delivering for our communities, or the chaos, division and recklessness of reform. It's important that we're really clear today about what it will mean for local people if we take a gamble with our future. It will throw away years of work we've done to make sure the council is in a sound financial position. It will mean savage cuts to our public services that members opposite will do anything they can to avoid being clear about this in the debate. And it will lead to decisions that hurt the poorest and most vulnerable in our society. That's what right-wing parties like Reform do. That's who they are. Honesty is the first key theme I want to focus on in my speech today. Whatever walk of life we come from, wherever we work, and whatever we do, honesty is a prerequisite for all us in public service, and I'd hope in our lives as well. That means being clear that none of us get everything right. I'll always be straight with our residents about the challenges we face and being open if we've got something wrong. That's what acting in Wakefield's interest looks like. But that is a stark contrast to some of the behaviour of members opposite, willfully misrepresenting financial position in a desperate attempt at political gain. Talking Wakefield down at every opportunity and focusing on dividing our communities rather than celebrating what we've got in common. This is straight out of the Trump playbook that Reform is following so closely. It's not smart, it's not clever, and we will keep calling it out. We will also continue to call out anybody who is making reckless and irresponsible or unrealistic promises.
What's your point of order, Councillor Sharp?
Nowhere in this budget and what is presented to the public talks about reform. Reform has not had anything to do with this budget. I don't know why we're talking about reform in a budget speech. We've got 2 reform councillors, yes, but they've had nothing to do with this. And I think we should just get to the point and propose what we are proposing for the people of Wakefield. Thank you.
That is not a point of order, Councillor Sharp, and we will carry on with the debate. Please do not shout a lot over the council chamber, thank you.
I am presenting my budget in the way I want to. It's not bound by anything that you think, Councillor Sharp, or anybody else. We will also continue to call out anybody who is making reckless, irresponsible or unrealistic promises. It's well documented that councils across the country, whichever political party they are run by, are facing severe financial challenges. The Tories are now flooding into reform, cut local government to the bone and made local taxpayers plug the gap. In a few minutes, I'm sure we're going to hear more of the same, proposing unsustainable approaches that will create a black hole in our finances. It's been done before elsewhere in the country. Councils that take that risk are always forced to slash services to the bone, raise council tax too much in the long term, and are forced into decisions that harm the people who need support the most. We will never take that risk with Wakefield's future. Residents can count on us to always act responsibly, plan for the long term, and focus on what's important in our local communities. In our work in those communities, I want to focus on today. Creating the conditions for everyone in our district to succeed. That's why I came into politics. At our best, when we work together, we are honest and take responsible, long-term decisions. Our work makes a huge positive difference for local people. That's what our budget is about today. Reliable bin collections, improving roads and filling potholes, and tackling antisocial behaviour, creating better parks and green spaces, boosting our high streets and local businesses, and supporting our most vulnerable young and older people. Our experienced leadership team means we continue to deliver on these things. People need to be aware of what is at stake in May and not put vital services at risk by taking a gamble. It is no time for novices, and I will explain why. Our responsible leadership means we're able to propose a balanced budget setting process this year. We're investing significant amounts, almost 21 million extra in 26-27 in essential local services. including to meet growing demand for adult care and to give young people the best start in life. These are the things that we legally have to do. It leaves us with a 23.4 million budget challenge. The only responsible way to plug this gap is through a blend of being more efficient, raising more income, and making targeted budget savings. So that's what Cabinet is putting forward today, saving 11.5 million by making the Council more efficient and provide the best value for money that we can. Proposing to raise an additional 2.2 million from housing and business growth, and 9.7 million through a combined 499 increase in council tax and the adult social care precept for next year. Now, I'm sure we're going to hear some interesting approaches to financial management from members opposite, and I'm sure that will focus heavily on council tax. But before we hear that, I want to share some home truths with them. The increase in council tax is in line with what nearly every council in the country is doing, including councils run by Reform, Conservatives and the Lib Dems. The long-standing national funding arrangements for local government assume that's what we will do. That's irrespective of which political party runs the council. And even after our decision today, Wakefield is most certain to have the lowest council tax in West Yorkshire after our budget is set. We never take the decision to increase council tax lightly. It's only after we've exhausted all other options. We know it's a tough time for people across the district, and this will mean an extra 1.72p per week for Band D households and 1.15 per week for Band A households. But we can only protect our frontline services if we have this extra funding. Anybody who tells you they can do something different without decimating our public services is being deeply irresponsible and gambling with the future of our district. If you oppose this decision, you need to spell out clearly what local services you cut to plug the funding gap. Taking that gamble will put something really valuable at risk. I see what it could mean every day, from our councillors working so hard to deliver in their local communities, to our experienced team of council officers delivering essential services for residents, to our recognised trade unions, Unison, GMB and Unite, who provide staff with such important support, and to our local community groups and regional partners who have such a strong commitment to Wakefield right across the public, private and voluntary sector. I want to say thank you for anyone who is part of our team in Wakefield. Everyone is passionate about our area, willing to chip in to make a difference, and with such a strong commitment to serving the public. In particular, I want to pay tribute to the Deputy Leader, my lead, Deputy Jack. He plays a crucial joint leadership role, working every day with me. And we lead an experienced Cabinet team who work tirelessly to deliver for our communities. Madam Mayor, for years, members from across this chamber have been calling for a structural reform to how local government is funded. It was never going to happen overnight, but we're seeing some positive steps in the right direction. We've finally got a government that is providing additional funding targeted in a fairer way based on local need. It's providing multi-year funding settlements that help councils plan much better for the long term, and which has recognised the devastating impact of austerity for our communities. Our Cabinet will always work constructively with the government when it's in Wakefield's interest, but we'll also call them out when they think they've got something wrong. We did a huge amount of work behind the scenes in December and January to make the case for more resources for our district, as set out in the budget papers today. That work has paid off. We've been allocated over 4 million of one-off additional funding for 26-27 as part of our final settlement. That money is available because we rolled our sleeves up and had influence at national level. If we elect a team of novices to run the council, we'll lose that influence overnight, and it will be the people of Wakefield who suffer the most. The one-off additional resources we've received are going to support two important priorities. First, our landmark district investment fund will be worth 4.3 million during 26-27. Coupled with reinvesting the profits after the winding up of Bridge Homes, it will provide £2 million of support for local families with school-aged children to help with the cost of school uniforms. Provide £100,000 to support 16 to 18-year-olds to access training and education. Help us respond to a shortage of accessible childcare provision. Make activity more accessible by providing new tailor-free Aspire Ignite membership for 16 to 24-year-olds. Provide £110,000 to fund police staff and 2 enforcement officer posts to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. And to deliver a £100 winter fuel payment to pensions who receive council tax support, direct cost of living to our most vulnerable residents. These are only possible because we're a well-run council with a constructive relationship with national and regional partners. Our second priority with this one-off money speaks a lot about what we've heard during debates in this chamber over the last few months. Electioneering, playing politics, relying on misinformation to build a negative narrative across the council. I reject that approach. People in Wakefield deserve so much better. Under our leadership, we're always going to take longer-term decisions in the best interests of our district. That's why a responsible and long-term approach has run through our budget-setting process. We can only deliver the essential services we can because we are stable. Act responsibly with public money and continue to invest to improve how we work. That's going to be our second priority with this one-off money, setting the council up for the future. When they speak later, some members might propose that we recklessly spend one-off resource and take a gamble with the council's future financial stability. People need to understand just how deeply irresponsible that is. It will build a black hole in our budget for years to come. It's a guarantee of chaos, savage cuts to our public services, higher bills in the long term, and for our most vulnerable residents to suffer the most. Taking that reckless approach will put a lot at risk. We've got some great stories to tell. We're delivering high-quality services. Our excellence in children's services is recognised at a regional and national level. We're supporting those services today with an additional £4.67 million to give our most vulnerable children the best possible start. Our award-winning parks and green spaces go from strength to strength, with 5 green flags across the district and over 600,000 already spent on upgrades. Our refuse service continues to have the consistently high collection rates. With 11 million bin collections a year, come rain or shine. We're investing an additional £8.8 million to deliver great adult social care. Alongside that, we're working to support older people live independently in their homes for longer. Our strong partnership, working with West Yorkshire Police, is having great results, reducing crime and antisocial behaviour. The £1.9 million next year will enable us to continue to offer 2 hours free parking to support local residents and businesses. We've announced ambitious regeneration plans for our city centre that will transform Wakefield for future generations. We're injecting an additional £2 million every year for the next 3 years to improve our roads, one of the biggest priorities residents raise with us. And because we have a track record of running the council well, we expect to have the lowest council tax anywhere in West Yorkshire. This is just a snapshot of the difference having an experienced Labour administration running this council makes. It's something people need to think long and hard about before taking a gamble in May. I understand the impulse to protest about politics and economy nationally, but local elections and our budget today are about who you trust to deliver important local services. Take a good hard look at who you think is capable of doing that before you risk what we've built in Wakefield. Our council descending into chaos isn't going to help improve your lives. It's going to make things much, much worse. So to conclude, Madam Mayor, the budget is about providing a sustainable platform for the council and about taking the long-term decisions that residents expect us to make. It's balanced and responsible. Opposition members are entitled to oppose our budget today, That's an important part of their role. But they need to set out a clear, honest alternative. We are going to call things out that are reckless, that are deliberately misleading, or that we know are totally unworkable. Anyone who is opposing our plan today needs to understand the depth of work that has gone into this process to protect our frontline services. If you're not backing Labour's budget today, you need to clearly spell out what you're planning to cut to fund the gap. And any members trying to mislead people in pretending we can use one-off money for things like council tax cuts are going to be called out on that robustly. Madam Mayor, we've seen what happens elsewhere in the country where councils are reckless. It leads to services being slashed to the bone and much higher council tax in the long run, and the most vulnerable in communities suffering the most. This Labour Council will never take a risk with Wakefield's future. We're always going to act responsibly in the best interest of our communities. And residents can count on us to continue to invest in what matters to them. With that, I commend the budget for 26-27.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Is the report seconded?
Second the report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. You've up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. I thought I was going to have to cut quite short then, so I appreciate the clarity on that, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second this Labour budget, a responsible and balanced budget that maintains the authority's strong financial position whilst delivering on the priorities of our residents and investing in this district. One that deals with the challenges we face, takes tough decisions, but balances these with support for the most vulnerable. One that acts in the best long-term interests of this council and this district, with ambitious plans for the future to create a better place and stronger communities. And one that is rooted in reality, in practical measures, not populism, not easy promises made without hope of ever being kept. Because when times are difficult, when siren voices offer simple solutions to complex problems, we on this side of the chamber will always do the right thing. We will face up to the challenges and be straight with people about what is possible. So let's be upfront. As the leader has said, our budget challenge this year is 23.4 million. That's because the broader challenges facing local government, both nationally and locally, have not gotten any easier. In the last year alone, there's been an inflationary cost pressure affecting the whole local government sector, estimated by the LGA to be in the region of £3.6 billion. Locally, this is reflected in a 14 million cost pressure due to inflation. By that, we mean we need to put in that much extra into the budget just to cover the same costs as before, just to effectively stand still as a council. When you combine that pressure with the various others, such as increased demand for care, children's services, but particularly vulnerable adults, these budget growth pressures become really significant. Some members in other parties have said this budget pressure somehow represents money lost by Wakefield Council and have asked where it's gone, as if spending on essential care services isn't an important and unavoidable use of council funds, as if somehow this is a local Wakefield problem that we should handle differently. But last year, research by the House of Commons Library showed that 81% of councils across the country expected to overspend on adult social care, representing an additional 600 million for the local government sector. This is both an increased demand, more complex care packages. It's a trend across the whole country, as the stats show. So of course we're going to feel the impact of that here too. It is a reality. And for us, as the leader has said, that means we need to invest an additional 9 million into adults and almost an additional 5 million into children's placements, figures set out at Appendix 1 of the budget report. These are crucial services looking after the most vulnerable, the first and paramount duty of any local authority. And around 2/3 of our total revenue budget goes on to caring for the vulnerable. We on this side of the chamber will never put funding for these essential services at risk by being reckless with the budget, and we will always balance the books responsibly. There is also another issue that needs to be addressed clearly in this chamber, and that's regarding this year's settlement from government. There was a lot to put right in the local government finance settlement, which was inherited from the Tories. 14 years of mismanagement, 14 years which left local government underfunded and unstable. That's not just the word of a Labour politician, that's according to almost any independent think tank that looked at local government over the period. The Independent Institute for Government said Labour inherited an unstable local government finance environment and went on in the same report to state that the most deprived authorities experienced the greatest cuts across the entire period between 2010 and 2024. In Wakefield's case, that was hundreds of millions of pounds. The first full-year government settlement, therefore, had to make up for this lost time and funding. 14 years of cuts cannot be wished away. While the funding we received this year, therefore, was an improvement, and the new three-year funding model is welcome for the greater stability it will bring, it did not give us everything we hoped for by way of an uplift. So, as Denise has said, we made our feelings known. We wrote to ministers and MPs, and successful lobbying by this administration and others like us has secured additional recovery grant funding to support the budget over the next 3 years. In case some colleagues don't believe this statement of fact, I have here the letter from Alison McGovern MP, thanking us for writing to her and making the case for Wakefield. Of course, while these one-off grants are welcome, they still do not address the baseline funding gap, which is why we've had to press ahead with the other measures in this budget. But it is a welcome start from the new government and hopefully a signal of intent that they intend to restore some stability to local government finance. More needs to be done though. While stability may sound boring, it's so important. A stable budget position means things get done. The basics happen. A council can not only deliver its core functions and react to problems, but it can invest, it can plan for the future. We also need to be honest with people that long-term stability can only come from increasing council tax. That's why, like nearly every authority across the country, including parties of all allegiances, as the leader has said, from Reform, Conservative, Liberal, Labour, Green, we have to propose an increase this year. Again, Wakefield is far from unique in this. So I thought I'd offer some stats which prove this is no idle comment or speculation. According to official government statistics, in the 2025-26 year, of the 384 authorities that were able to increase council tax according to the referendum principles, 294 increased by the maximum rate, and 56 were close to the maximum. So around 90% almost, over 80%. Let's be really clear, this is happening nearly everywhere across the country, apart from the few very wealthiest areas. Every council is having to put council tax up. And that's because successive UK governments have made the whole premise of local government finance contingent on raising council tax. It's been capped in such a way that if we don't take the maximum increase in a given year, it can never be recovered, and that affects the authority's budget like a black hole, as the leader has said. We all know this is a fact around this chamber. Let's not pretend any different. We still have the lowest council tax in West Yorkshire, as the leader has said. Wakefield will likely retain the lowest rate of all 5 councils after the budget setting process and is likely to still be around £163 cheaper than neighbouring Kirklees a year for a Band E property. We've also had no resort to use emergency financial assistance, which some councils have had to take out while others have entered 114 territory. Stability means that we can avoid saddling future generations of local ratepayers with the massive debts associated with those requests. We'll never take that risk here. We'll never undermine the authority's long-term budget position or make an unsustainable low tax pitch for a particular electoral advantage. The financial stability provided by a strong budget allows us to do the basics really well. As Denise has said, this is a budget about good public services, about reliable bin collections, 99.99% on time and on schedule. It's about ensuring we improve roads and potholes and other highways problems, that ensures antisocial behaviour enforcement are tackled with more money and more officers. More generally, that the myriad of other vital council services that our council delivers every day, take place on time and are delivered well for local people. But as well as the basics that people rely upon and expect, this is about investment, about a positive plan for the future. There's so much more to do. Our strong position allows us to invest in our people and our places. Our capital programme features more than £414 million in investment right across this district up until 2030. The profit generated from the success of Bridge Homes will allow us to invest in our district, and we've used that to create the District Investment Fund. Targeted, practical help that will support local people, with the cost of school uniform grants, with more funding to tackle ASB, targeted employment support for young people and people with families, winter seasonal payments for the poorest pensioners, free Aspire memberships for young people, alongside other sources of funding like Pride in Place and government grants, which are enabling us to put even more money into parks with the biggest investment in play areas and green spaces seen in decades. Millions more going into highways and fixing potholes. And of course, subject to final approval, a transformational, once-in-a-generation regeneration scheme for the heart of Wakefield using government grant to kickstart the Cathedral Quarter project, the change our city needs. All of this, though, everything the council does, none of it would be possible without our staff. Like Denise, I want to place on record my thanks to all employees of this authority in whatever role they do. They work hard to help local people on a daily basis. They are the backbone of this district. Public service is not always easy, but it is always important. It adds value to our district. It makes people's lives and our places better. I hope parties across the chamber value our staff and will continue to do so. I also want to say specific thanks to Saf and his finance team for all their support in preparing the budget, politically too to our group and Cabinet for their support in setting out this year's proposals. Proposals which are in the best interest of this council and this district. Madam Mayor, it's a simple choice for us to make in this chamber today. A stable position, the lowest council tax in West Yorkshire, investment in people's priorities and the district's future, or financial uncertainty, easy promises without substance, but with long-term consequences. Let's do the right thing. With that, I second the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemingway. Councillor Williamson, as leader of the Unity Group, I would now invite you to respond to the Cabinet's budget proposals and in doing so, move your proposed amendments to the budget which have been circulated to members in advance of the meeting. You have up to 1 hour to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to start positive. The District Support Fund, I think, is good, and I support that. I think it's probably trying to do a little bit too much, so it might have been better off focusing it, but I'm not going to bicker about that. But we've heard a lot from the leader and the deputy leader about experience, about steady hands, and about it being no time for novices. And experience is valuable. I'm not going to dispute that. I don't think anybody would. But experience on its own isn't good judgment. And if experience is the test, then I think the Cabinet's record must surely be the measure. So let's have a look. Under this experienced leadership team, the Council exposed itself to a £370,000 financial risk by failing to ensure key civic buildings, including Wakefield 1, County Hall, this very building which is the heart of our local democracy. Under this experienced leadership team, Hazelgarth Care Home was abruptly closed, causing distress and harm to residents and their families. Under this experienced leadership team, we saw issues at Sandal Magna School, where contractors were paid, significant amounts of money for no repair work to get done. Under this experienced leadership team, the Council's blunder with the Orion Homes land sale in Featherstone has cost this Council and our residents nearly £3 million. And I could go on and on, right, but I think we'd be here all day and it'd probably take me longer than an hour. And I think it's just important to reflect, because if that's what experience looks like at running a local authority, then I think it probably is definitely time for novices to take charge, because I'm not sure they could do any worse than that. Now, moving on to our amendment. This isn't a protest, it's not a gimmick, and it's not an exercise in opposition for opposition's sake. It's a balanced alternative which shows that different choices can be made. And yeah, the leader and deputy mentioned council tax. That's a factor in it. So let's start with that. We are proposing to reduce the overall council tax increase down from your 5% to 3.5%. But the social care precept will be retained because we think it's important to protect vital public services. But our position, but in a cost of living crisis, we can't accept maximum rises year on year.
What's your point of order, Councillor Hemingway?
It's both. We do both, don't we?
Is moving his amendment.
Yeah. Squeezing households should be a last resort, not the default. And all we're saying is defaulting to the maximum rise every year is not inevitable. It's a political choice taken by the Labour group because it's the easy thing to do. The question isn't whether we can apply the maximum increase. We can. The question is whether we need to. And our balanced alternative shows we don't. The warnings we've heard from the experienced leadership team about that councils that took risks, such as lowering the council tax rise, ended up with this wholesale slashing of services. And don't get me started on the black hole, because I think the leader's using Rachel Reeves's calculator on that one. But let's be clear about the risks in other authorities, such as Woking, Thurrock and Croydon, because they did not end up on the verge of bankruptcy, because simply they chose not to apply the maximum council tax 1 year. They did so because of prolonged austerity, rising costs, governance failures and serious blunders by the leadership, similar to the ones I mentioned. And interestingly, a lot of those councils issued a Section 114 notice because of risky regeneration projects, big regeneration projects, such as purchasing shopping centres, like the Ridings. So I think maybe the Cabinet should reflect on that before attacking everybody else's proposals. A modest difference in the increase in council tax isn't going to drive this council into financial ruin. But poor oversight, weak governance and rushing through major regeneration projects without a real plan and without full transparency is likely to. So if the Cabinet wants to learn from the experiences of other authorities, I think you should reflect on the ridings. You should take a pause and ask yourself whether it is truly in the best interests of this council and as residents. So getting on to his council tax reduction and how we'll pay for it. So we have a few proposals which balance it out. The first is reducing the annual transfer to general reserves from 2 million to 1.3. And before anybody on the opposite benches starts jumping up and down about how reckless that is, that was the proposal by the Cabinet in earlier draft versions of their budget. So we're not doing anything reckless, anything irresponsible. We're just simply saying we're going to, pursue different priorities and try and ease the burden on our residents.
What's your point of order, Councillor Farmer?
I'm a little bit lost here. Are we now having the amendment, or are we talking about the budget from the...
It's the amendment.
So we're actually going to be talking on the amendment now?
Yes.
Okay.
So, we're also going to end the 2-hour free parking. And that's important as well, because while we've got the leader and the deputy leader talking about the impact, the long-term impact of decisions like, our 3.5% council tax increase instead of a 5%, 1% of council tax directly equates to the cost of 2-hour free parking over the year. So if lowering council tax by even 1% is reckless and is going to damage the future financial position of this council, then the 2-hour free parking would as well. But we're ending that because studies show that free parking doesn't really increase footfall. It's got a negligible effect at best. So what we're going to do, what we're proposing, is to use reserves for a one-off fund to develop a business support and training scheme which will be focused at people who want to set up a new business, a cooperative and 12 struggling businesses already. And we'll explore using the capital programme to purchase small commercial properties in the town to provide affordable rents with time-limited grace periods of 6 to 12 months. Because it's the retail offer that drives footfall in city centres. And we know that costs such as high rents are the real barrier facing businesses in setting up shop. And we don't just want election gimmicks. We're wanting to offer real solutions and bring in policies that actually achieve real results and actually, work to improve us high street. And that's what this amendment is about overall. It's about changing the direction of this council and trying to get the basics right. Because while the deputy leader talks about focusing on the priorities of our residents, it's not really what happens, because we've got 27,000 people in this district waiting for genuinely affordable housing. And it's not just a statistic, it's a signal that something's seriously wrong with this approach. And that figure of 27,000 has quadrupled since the Labour group decided to get rid of all their housing, set up WDH, now called VICO. And if we're serious about meeting the actual real needs of us residents, then this council can no longer remain a bystander and let the market deliver the solution, because it's just not happening. That waiting list just keeps growing and growing. And VICO, they don't care about us residents. They're not really building much here. If they are, it's shared ownership. It's not driving down that waiting list. They're too busy in Bradford and Whitby and Scarborough and wherever else. So that's why we'll explore how the council can once again own and rent out its own properties. And before anybody blows this out of proportion, we're not saying we're going to bring in a new department, full of builders and electricians and stuff and start building them ourselves, because that would be unrealistic. What we're saying is we'll do what other councils do. And when new housing developments are built, we'll take a percentage of those houses at discounted rates, and then we'll rent them out to people on the waiting list to drive that down, and which, over the long term, you can do it, so it's not a sudden pressure on the revenue budget, and you can build it up slowly as we get more houses. It's not a pie-in-the-sky idea either, because I know when we brought us motion last year, it was attacked as, we can't do this, it's unaffordable, it's too risky, but it doesn't look as risky now. You came out and announced the ridings and knocking down all those buildings and building huge skyscrapers and stuff, in the middle of the city centre. Some of them on the pictures, 11 and 12 stories. So it's about priorities. So while your priority in the ridings regeneration is to house commuters who work in Sheffield and Leeds and other big cities, our priority is to focus on the people who live here, to house vulnerable
Councillor Williamson,
people.
can I just ask you, we're getting some feedback, and I think it's your phone's tuning it, microphone.
All right.
Thank you.
And to prioritise residents who are struggling. And then getting the basics right is why we'll be investing in a detailed value for money and options appraisal on all outsourced arrangements within this council. That's something we've been challenging since we first formed in August. Because when we talk about wasted expenditure, I'm going to be honest, that's probably where we're going to find it, because this council routinely enters into contracts just because that's normal practice. That's what we've always done. That's what we think's right. That's what we're going to continue to do. And rarely it's done without looking at the long-term costs, without actually figuring out if it's, actually worth the cost of doing that way, whether it could be done cheaper in-house. And since we got us motion through last year, we found out that the council doesn't actually know how many contracts it's got. Doesn't know. It's estimated to be around 300. There was no central register recording these. So my question is, how can we know all those contracts deliver best value for our residents and as taxpayers? It's impossible to know that if we don't even know how many we've got. Again, an experienced leadership team can't even get the basics of contract management right. So we're proposing to go through all these contracts when we find out where they are. We'll assess whether all the arrangements are needed, because we've got a lot of private consultants dipping their hands into the piggy bank, and we'll see which services can be delivered cheaper in-house. Options appraisals are not ideological, they're good governance, and I think financial efficiency begins with knowing what we're actually paying for. And I think any savings we make through that process can actually go to fund future services, can go to reduce future council tax rises as well. And then we're going to move on to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, because we're proposing to fund the expansion of that scheme into all deprived wards and neighbourhoods in line with his motion last July. It will be done on a universal basis in those areas, because we're wanting to give all kids the chance to improve, to develop early and improve their life chances in later life. And it will see all children up to 5 in eligible areas receive a free book every month. Because we know, while family finances are tight and during a cost of living crisis, sometimes a book is a luxury many can't afford in this district. And I have to say, on this, I'm disappointed that I'm even actually having to put it into his budget amendment, because our motion last July was unanimous. Every single person in here voted for it. And all we've had since is attempts behind the scenes to undermine that motion, right, and divert it down a different path into a more targeted approach. No report has gone to Cabinet, despite that being the expressed wish of every councillor in this room. And I think it is quite shameful. For further savings, I have a simple political philosophy. If we ask as residents to tighten the belts through maximum tax rises and service cuts every year, then I think councillors should be expected to do the same. If we're going to expect pressure on others, I think we should take a hit as well. So that's why we're proposing to cut special responsibility allowances paid to all senior councillors by over 50%. Leadership means sharing the burden, not expecting everyone else to make a sacrifice while we protect ourselves. And I hope the leader and the rest of the Cabinet will agree that we should be willing to take a hit and help shoulder the burden you place on our residents. Or, I wonder if you'll refuse to support a cut in those allowances and carrying on doling out those jobs to secure loyalty like treats, as I found in the Labour group. Because it does make me wonder, when we pay chair of scrutiny committees over £10,000 a year, why no actual scrutiny ever really gets done in this council. It does make me wonder. And finally, we want to improve local democracy and provide a better relationship between the council and its residents. Our budget funds for a dedicated SEND forum, giving families a place to get advice and raise concerns, and, crucially, to be heard. Because there is a huge disconnect between what this council knows and the real lived experiences of SEND families throughout this district. You know, we had the exchange, a couple of meetings ago where Councillor Isherwood failed to wouldn't acknowledge some of the concerns we raised because the council doesn't know about it. Despite, after myself, Councillor Gert and Councillor Harvey going and meeting with the Wakefield Parent Carers Forum after that meeting, they told us they did inform the council about such instances of self-harm and alcoholism and domestic violence in 10 families. So there's a disconnect here, and I think we just basically, regardless of what's been told to who behind the scenes, I think it just shows we need some sort of mechanism. So officially, these issues can be raised directly with the council, and then you can take them into account. We'll also fund residents' forums across the entire district so communities can have a real voice directly into the heart of the council. These will be done so local residents can attend a forum, they can raise issues and concerns they have in their wards and areas, right? They can directly feed policy suggestions into the council machinery, and they can put forward priorities which could be considered in future budgets. Because I think too many of us residents, no matter where they live, feel that decisions are done to them rather than with them. And again, the ridings is a prime example. The big announcement that came out of nowhere, everybody feeling shocked because nobody knew that were on the cards. And I think we do need to take the experiences and the views of us residents into account going forward. We need to develop a genuinely two-way relationship between the council and residents. So our focus on democracy as well ties into the budget process we've just been through as well. Because, to be honest, through that process, we repeatedly found that services were unwilling to provide clear, evidence-based responses to the stuff we were putting forward. We were struggling to get responses. Right? We were getting numbers plucked out of thin air when we put forward policy proposals. No serious meat to it. Right? And that's not just during this process, though. That's something I hear a lot of councillors talk about when they interact with this council in terms of casework and things they put forward. They can't get anything done. Council doesn't listen. We've got to fight, services and stuff to get good outcomes. That's the reality of what we're operating in. And opposition in this chamber isn't ornamental. It's actually a vital component of a local democracy. You come out with ideas, we test them. We come out with ideas, you test them. That's how it should work. We debate, we discuss stuff, we put stuff to the vote. But that can only happen if services are willing to provide clear information and support councillors, because we set the political direction of this council, and that should be informed by officers. And I think a lot of the times in this chamber and how this council runs, I think we get that the wrong way around. Right? I think too often a lot of focus is spent on rubber stamping the recommendations of officers, and there's not enough policy initiation the other way. And it is a bit of a farce of how it operates in practice. So simply put, we need to try and change the culture of this council, because it's no good how it operates currently. When we go and have discussions in different parts of this council, whether it's in here, whether it's in meetings, in other buildings and stuff, private meetings, I can honestly say I rarely hear anybody mention residents in those meetings. It's about us. What are we going to do? How do we do this? Very rarely hear anybody say, what impact will this have on us residents? How can we improve this for us residents? They don't seem to be the focus. The focus is internal to the institution, what's best for the council, not what's best for us residents. And I think this needs to be a wake-up call, because going forward, whether I'm here after May trying to do another budget amendment, we can't have a process like we've just had. And I know it's not just our group that felt like this as well. So with that, I'm going to move our budget amendment, and I'm going to urge you all to put your residents first, right? To ease their financial burden slightly and support this balanced budget alternative, because no matter what the leader and deputy leader may say, this is not a reckless budget amendment. This is a serious one. We spent a long time, trying to get it right, trying to ensure we weren't doing anything that could set this council up for a fail down in the future. It is a serious amendment, and it's not going to lead to financial ruin. It's just setting out a slightly different priority for this council. It's about just trying to ease the burden on us residents, and I think sometimes that's what we forget. And you never know, if you do support a lower council tax rise, some of you might not get wiped out in May, and you might actually be sat here, on the 8th of May. You never know, dear. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'm moving as budget amendment, and I'll put it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Bates, would you now wish to comment on the proposals and in doing so, second the proposed amendments to the budget as proposed by Councillor Williamson? You have up to 15 minutes to speak.
Can I second the motion and speak later, Madam Mayor, or it has to be now?
On the amendment, yes.
Okay, well, I think Councillor Williams has covered the budget, so
Thank you.
I'll wait until after the debate now.
I will now take questions or comments on Councillor Williamson's proposed amendments to the budget. This is subject to the normal 5-minute rule and members are only permitted to speak once on the proposal. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be really quick. I just want to say I appreciate Councillor Williams and the opposition group putting this together, because usually it's sort of like a nice wish list, and I think this has made some unpopular decisions, taking away free parking from residents. A lot of people love that. A lot of people think it's not needed. So it's not like they've just, gone with the popular stuff. They've actually thought about it. I don't agree fully with everything Councillor Williams said. I've sat in hundreds of meetings and councillors of all colours do often talk about residents quite a lot actually and what's best for them, and the people I represent don't want this or want this, and I wouldn't want that to be misconstrued to the public. The councillors do care of every colour. I've seen it firsthand. And I also disagree on councillor allowances as well. I'm not going to change your mind now that I'm not in the Labour group. I think if you're coming to do this role, you sometimes have to give up full-time employment and you have to give up other things, and you put a lot of time in. A lot of people put a lot of time in this chamber, way beyond, and I know some people don't. Some people do next to nothing, the bare minimum. But if you're doing a job and you're doing it well, you do need that remuneration to go with it. So I don't fully agree with that either. But on the whole, I actually think it's great. I think one thing we always do is we always increase the council tax by the maximum, and it's for the right reasons. And we talk about inflation, but it doesn't seem to be linked to inflation. Whether inflation is 2% or Rachel Reeves has pushed it to 6 or 7%, we always go with the 4.99. On balance, I'm actually going to support this. I think a reduction in council tax would be very welcome, and I can add afterwards when I'm talking about the Labour group's budget further reasons as to why I'm not supporting this when that debate comes. Thanks.
Can I just make a personal clarification, please? Yeah.
So a point of personal explanation relates to something that Councillor Graham has fundamentally misunderstood in what you said. So it's got to be that misunderstanding as opposed to simply something that you want to clarify.
Just on the, I wasn't referring to councillors as such, I was just generally in the machinery of the council. It was a more general comment, so I just wanted to clarify.
That's noted, thank you. Councillor Hemingway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, to come in on a few comments Councillor Williamson and Councillor Graham's just made. I agree with Councillor Graham. I think members of all parties in this chamber care about residents and bring them up at every opportunity they can. I also agree with your comments in terms of elected members' allowances. We've frozen allowances. It's right that we've frozen allowances in the past. Let's not forget it was a demand of the Chartist movement that MPs be salaried so that they could effectively represent their constituents. So there is a working class argument for why people should be remunerated. But I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Grimm, on that point. I just want to come in on a few things Jake said. Firstly, in terms of the unity plan for housing and particularly what you set out in your comments as what's supposed to necessarily in writing. For me, what you've outlined there is that we won't build, under your plan, new houses. We won't have a new housing department. We'll have affordable homes allocations within private developments, and we'll take more of that. That's what happens at the moment. To an extent it is, and the problem is about viability. In a private market where a lot of housing is delivered by the private sector, and that's just the national situation that we're in, that's the reality of it, there is sometimes a viability issue, and sometimes developers try and take the mick, and the council pushes back, and planning officers and elected members push back and try and ensure we get as much affordable housing as possible within those developments. But I don't see that your plan would significantly increase the numbers of that. I don't understand, so I'd appreciate if you do intend to come back some clarification on those points. In terms of how we get through this significant housing backlog, again a national picture where stuff needs to happen, the riding's proposal is a way to significantly eat into that housing backlog. We have given an absolute commitment as part of this to rehouse those residents already there for VICA in the first phase. The social tenancies in there will be the first phase, but there will be significant new accommodation, including for local people, including affordable accommodation. So we can't be complaining about a housing waiting list and then opposing a major proposal to eat into those numbers and provide significant new accommodation. Just want to come back on council tax in terms of the cut you're proposing. It is reckless, Jake. The comments from the Chief Financial Officer say it technically balances over the terms of the medium-term financial strategy. It has a detrimental impact of 3 million over that period, but it will have a detrimental impact every year forever thereafter. And that effect compounds because the increase isn't on the increase is on what you didn't increase. And we can't recover that because of the caps that are on local government council tax increases. So that money is lost forever. And I know you are a passionate trade unionist, we both are in that sense, and you've quite rightly represented the voice of workers in this chamber on a number of occasions. This may mean us having to make more cuts that affect the workforce in the future if we do not take the opportunity to keep that base level, that stability rising, then that will affect the long-term position of this authority and stability. I just wanted to finish on some of your proposals about reserves as well, because I think any members of the audit committee, anyone that's read the reports, there were clear recommendations from the council's auditor, Grant Thornton, that we should look to increase reserves, particularly financial resilience reserves. Your proposals would eat into those significantly. So I do have serious issues with this. I do think long-term, this is a reckless amendment that would significantly affect the council's long-term stability, and I won't be supporting it for that reason. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I'm interested in the comments that you made that the 2-hour free car park is not needed. Well, I'll challenge you, Jake, to go into Wakefield City Centre, Pontefract, Castleford, any of our city centres and speak like that to businesses, because out there on the high street, it is making a difference, it is needed. So with that, I put the challenge to you. You've mentioned these neighbourhood forums, policy forums, whatever you want to call them, where you will have officers, yourself there, listening to the needs of what local residents want. Well, you're the only one in Pontefract, and you've got a petition for over 1,000 people there saying, fetch back 2-hour free parking. Do you listen to them or do you ignore them?
Councillor Farmer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you put some really good points there for, but I won't be voting for the amendment simply because over the last maybe 10 years I've always been a massive supporter of free parking. So I'm not going to be an hypocrite, and that's the reason I won't be supporting it, because I do support the parking. I think we've done budgets in the past where that's brought up. So I might be a lot of things, but I'm not a hypocrite. As regards the comments about councils not putting their residents first, I strongly disagree with that. I've worked in the last 12 years with some fantastic councillors from different parties in Ossett and Gawthorpe, and they've always put the residents first. I don't give a monkeys about parties. I was voted to represent the people of Ossett and Gawthorpe. My residents will always come first. There's one particular councillor in Ossett and Gawthorpe standing in May, and he's made the comment, it won't make any difference if I win. I'm still going to do exactly the same. So, you know, that comment about councillors not caring enough about the residents, I totally and utterly disagree with. Thank you.
Councillor Pickers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't believe we've got sort of a straightforward point of information, but just to sort of say, you said we don't have a contracts register. We do. One of the things that we've been developing over the last 12 months is the approach we take to things. So with the appointment of a commercial director, we have established a contract register. If you're going to say, are we within one or two, are we sure to within one or two contracts what we have? But very substantially, we know we know the contracts that we have. We're working to maximise the value we get from those contracts.
Councillor Swift.
I just wanted to speak in favour to defend the expenditure on car parking, because I think this is often misrepresented as if it's kind of instead of public transport. And oddly, the opposite is true. If we allow the decline of our main centres to carry on the way in which it's going at the moment, then the only places in this borough that are genuinely accessible by public transport will actually decline. And what's on offer to those of our population who don't have access to a car will actually decline further. Now, we're not Leeds. We're not in a situation where we can actually squeeze people onto public transport by squeezing car parking. What we do is divert people to the out-of-town facilities, which the City Fields thing is only the most recent. We have approved through the planning system, despite the comments of a number of people in this room, we have approved through the planning system a whole mass of car-orientated alternatives within very, very close range of our major centres. And so that planning cat is out of the bag, and I think we do have to incentivise, and I've never seen any research that says for towns like ours that plentiful, reasonably priced car parking is not a very strong incentive. But basically, I think that whether we've got the exact details right, I don't know, but substantial investment in more attractive car parking is not only an investment to attract the people who are in cars, but also to maintain the strength of our centres so that those places that can facilitate public transport actually remain strong enough to do so.
Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Williamson, I do think you're right about alternative budgets, and what they are offering is different choices, and it is about different choices, and those choices will be different dependent on our political perspectives, our social ones, our moral ones. And when I look, I could mention a few here, but if I look at your idea to have a housing revenue account again, idealistically, I can probably sort of go along with you. However, you yourself acknowledge that there will need to be a feasibility study to see if this is practical. And I strongly suspect that this would not be practical. To start with, we'd have to have a whole host of new staff, which would put pressure on our revenue account, because we'd have to manage these houses. I presume you're talking about us managing them. And then, in terms of purchasing them, I suspect we'd have to take out loans in order to do that. And over time, that would be considerable, even though we would get maybe, the rent monies, but that would take a lot of paying back. We'd be talking about absolute decades. So my concern is that any future budgets, if we were to go down that route, any future budgets that we were to look at would be ever more difficult to become balanced because of the extent of the debt that I suspect that we will be taking on. Whereas at the moment, I've got to say as well, I've got to agree with Councillor Hemingway, as part of the audit committee, as you are too, that I was really heartened to see that we are assuming that 2 million contribution to general reserves to build up our reserves and to ensure that, we have financial stability. One of the things that the leader and deputy leader have talked about is financial stability. And I do have a real fear that the council going into looking at having a housing revenue account will detract considerably from that, and our residents would not benefit from that.
Councillor Ahmed.
Speaking in the amendment, I think Councillor Williamson has challenged and your assumption of raising council tax by 5% every year, and in order to deliver 3.5% within the limited time that was available to all the councillors that were involved with the alternative budgets, showing everyone in this council chamber that a budget can be delivered, which isn't the assumption of 5% delivered every year. And that is what you've confirmed, those people that were actually spoke without having something written for them, first time Councillor Hemingway has spoken without a script, he's confirmed that actually that you've never ever challenged that assumption. You've never challenged the assumption that council tax has to rise less than 5%. It's never come as a thought process that residents, and you use the same arguments every year you come out with that bandy, so much pound every pence, but it's risen, it's not 5%. If you add all the other expenses on, of all the other rubbish that's added on, that's not even in people's control, it comes about 10%, which means in the last 5 years, council tax has risen by about 50% for Wakefield residents. Some people in this district, I pay £310 a month in council tax. People can buy houses for that much. It's an absolute load of rubbish, and that assumption, sat there talking about it, is absolute rubbish as well, which shows that the idea of challenging that assumption is what has been your input, apart from, yeah, we'll just raise council tax 5% every year, we'll add the police stuff on there, the fire stuff, and we'll just throw it on the residents in there. It's rubbish, it always has been rubbish. And unfortunately, obviously, deadlines, whatever, I'm not going to make excuses. We have got an amendment here. It's not financially reckless, because if it was, it shouldn't have been approved. I'm not going to mention the council officers are independent of the council process. If it was reckless, then that would have been mentioned. But we have to trust the judgment of the officers that were involved. They know what they're doing, and they would have said it was reckless. It's not acceptable. Councillor Williamson, we're not going to accept it. They've not said that. It's been approved as an amendment, and for that reason, it's financially viable. Does that mean you have to pull your calculator out next year and do a bit of hard work and find savings? Then so be it. Because every single one, this council, when it was forced to find savings, found those savings. You know, when you talk austerity, all the time, yeah? All the time. The austerity that you brought in as well, and still bringing in, you all found the savings. Whoever did the budget at that time, and it was the officers, it wasn't any of you lot, you found the savings. Because when it came down to the big hard government telling you to do it, save £30 million, obviously we know austerity was a load of rubbish, you know what I mean? You know that. But you did it because it was forced on you, like every single person whose income falls, yeah? Instead of blathering, speak up in public, don't blather away, yeah? Speak in public if you've got something to agree with that, yeah? Right? There's no point in chuntering on there in the sidelines. So if you've got something to say, the council managed to do it. What's the point?
What's your point of order, Councillor Morley?
I'm just curious, is Councillor Ahmed talking about our budget now, or the amendment? Because he's rambling, I'm not sure where we are anymore. I don't know if that's a point of order or not.
Can we speak to the amendment, please?
Well, I don't know. I am speaking to the amendment, but I think maybe your understanding of English is very limited in that sense. So you know what I mean. So go back to school, right? So
we don't get.
This is where.
Please don't get personal.
Yeah.
Can I ask Councillor Admin what he means by that, please?
No, we're carrying on. Stick to the amendment, please.
You know where I am at the end of the council chamber. If you want to ask any questions, you can do. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Yes, Councillor Morley.
That sounded very threatening there, Madam Mayor. He knows where I am. That sounded very, very threatening, intimidating, that, Madam Mayor. I don't think we should be talking that language in this council chamber.
Right. Councillor Roberts.
I don't think Councillor Ahmed's finished his time.
Councillor Ahmed.
Right. So, in terms of coming to the amendment, I actually agree with pretty much everything, Councillor Williamson. Unfortunately, I think what you've managed to do is show up the experienced people, the novices have shown up the so-called experienced people in how to deliver at least 1.5% in the limited time that you had, which is about 3 months. But because the proposal involves the 2 hours free parking, that was an area which I believe, I know it's unfortunate, but I wanted to support the whole thing, and I do believe that you put a lot of effort into it, and I respect that as well. But I think, unfortunately, because of the 3 hours parking, which was, as you know,
Councillor Ahmed, you've now had your 5 minutes.
Yeah, which was done by the Conservatives. Unfortunately, I can't, but I do support the rest of it.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, would you like to... Sorry. Councillor Haslam.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of things to say. And I was actually looking forward to seeing the third budget proposal as it was passed across Facebook, but apparently that didn't get over the threshold line. So it's quite good actually that the opposition, the new opposition, can actually put something forward.
What's the point of order? No. Budget.
But that's not right.
Yeah. We're talking about this amendment.
Thank you. So, my contribution really, I mean, I think the car parking aspect is effectively where the saving you're putting forward. Because when you look at the saving of 1.5%, or just shy of 1.5%, that equates to about 51 pence in the typical band increase or decrease. So we're going to save residents, or households rather, 51 pence effectively. Now, for me, taxes are to redistribute, give services and one thing or another. And I think Councillor Hemingway's summed it up with his contribution in terms of how the budget is going to be cut and service different parts. I think Councillor Morley picked up on how vibrant the city centres are and the towns where there is the free parking. I've heard comments from people actually complaining they can't get a car parking space because there's that many vehicles coming to these areas. It's quite evident through Christmas and during December, the patronage across the city centre was massive. But even that didn't stop the big retailers pulling out of the ridings, in fairness. So, but my view is that it's the right decision because in terms of what are the alternatives, I think Councillor Swift sort of alluded to it, is public services. And unfortunately, until the West Yorkshire Mayor takes the control through franchising of the bus services, we ain't going to get the bus service that I think residents of Wakefield desperately need. So we've got to support residents across our district to be able to access the city and the larger towns because the bus service, quite frankly, is poor. And I've made these points quite often on the talking transport side. In fact, someone who came to them then made that very point. They believe that this council is contrary, or rather opposite to West Yorkshire Combined, but actually I think it's the sensible thing to do. So there's lots of things I understand there's a lot of sentiment that you're doing and putting forward, and I think most people would agree with a lot of the aspiration in there, but I mean, it's just not balanced for me enough. There's enough, I think there's a lot of thought going into it, I could see how you're articulating it, and it's just about that parking for me. I think that is a big ticket issue across our district, and it's not. Apologise, but I can't support that, mate.
Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to speak on the amendment, and I do wish to give my colleague congratulations on putting forward a good alternative budget. Many may not agree on it, and that is fair enough, but I think opposition is about putting forward alternatives. It's good for democracy in this place to see an alternative budget being put forward. You may not agree with the costings, you may have disagreements. I agree with Councillor Spaten, some of what she said. She has there's ideology in there that across the parties we can all agree on, you know, whether independent or not. So I think there should be some congratulation on that. And there are holes. There's holes in the Labour budget. You know, there are decisions you don't want to make, you know. So I think we should just recognise that it is important to have a good alternative budget that can be put forward. And I do think that the council, whoever's elected after May, they need to look into assisting the opposition parties to put forward, you know, better alternative budgets and giving them that support in order to do that. I think that all parties could agree on that at least. So that's my contribution.
Councillor Bates, would you now like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, I haven't got an hour, so I'm not going to repeat what Jake said, except that I agree with every word of it. And I think the fundamental problem that we've got is basically what I said last year, and a lot of people saying now. If Keir Starmer had kept his promise, we wouldn't be in this position, because it is an austerity budget, just like it was last year. And we've had a few extra crumbs fall off the top table, and they want to put extra money into reserves. Well, people need it now. And the thing that sticks in my mind, what's just been said about the free parking, so you'd rather put 5% on everybody's council tax just for a couple of hours free parking. I think that's the people that can't afford cars, or even the bus fare into town, we're not going to be very pleased with that. But our budget, and I'd like to thank Saf and his staff for the assistance that they gave us. You know, I attended those meetings. The only problem that we did have was getting information, accurate information out of the service directors. It was a bit like pulling teeth. But anyway, it's been passed as a balanced budget, so we can't be criticised for that. But every year we have this maximum increase and efficiencies. And my description of efficiencies is cuts. You know. And what we learned is last year, the efficiency savings proposed, the council only achieved 70% of them, so that's an overspill onto this year's budget. I don't know when that's going to end. But the fundamental problem is all these issues, all they take is political will. And for 14 years we stood here and slagged off the, well, I didn't, but plenty did, the Tory government. But we've got an even worse one now. So, you know, and I know you've all been whipped to vote against the amendment, but at least we've shown what we were challenged last year to provide an alternative. Well, we have done. And I think it's a very good one. It took a lot of work, and I think Councillor Williams' effort into it is commendable. And I'd like to cover a few things. The Dolly Parton thing, I find that extremely annoying that we're still having to put this in this budget. It shouldn't have been, because it was approved last July, unanimously. And twice already that's come up, and now again we've had to put it back in the budget. So I wonder who is running this council. You know, we can't get anything done, and I'm not the only one that's got that view in this chamber. I think most of you have, if you're honest. But particularly this one, special allowances, I suppose those who are receiving it are not going to be too happy with that. But it's easy to make tough choices for somebody else, isn't it, and not yourself. But like I said, it's not going to happen, but we have highlighted a few points. We have put forward an alternative, viable alternative. And like I said, your free parking, you seems to, what we learned when we were discussing that was a lot of people, the parking fines have increased. They didn't give me the numbers, but because people didn't realise that they had to still get a ticket, they thought they could just park up for 2 hours and get it free. So the parking fine, I don't know what the figures is, but that's, you know, so that's, the people that's got those fines are not really benefited from 2 hours free parking, have they? I think it's something like £40, isn't it? I don't know if the council's accepted any excuses for them, but I doubt it. So free parking's become another source of revenue, as far as I can see. And the social care budget, they said that it overspills, it's not enough. But that was imposed by the Tory government on this council. And again, we all celebrated that when the Labour government got in, when they could have changed that. They could have taken it back on the government like it used to be. So it's political will, all of this, isn't it? And it's the Labour government that's put us in this position, not a Tory government. I think, like Councillor Farmer said some time ago, it's your government now. It's not my government. And like I said, I second the motion. I think it's a good amendment. It should be voted on, but it's not going to happen, so I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor. I second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Before taking the proposed amendments to the budget to the vote, Councillor Williamson, as mover, would you like to sum up?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. So, just to go through a few points raised, I'll start with the housing, because obviously it was raised about how viable and stuff it is, but I think we're too complacent on this, very, very complacent, because we seem to be in a position where, you know, if we start doing it, it'll take a long time, and how viable is it and stuff, but then in the next breath we sit back and wait, and the market will sort it out. You know, we seem to take no responsibility for housing, you know, vulnerable people and people who need genuinely affordable housing. You know, since some of you still on the benches today voted to basically outsource all this housing, essentially, that's what you did. And that decision that some of you made who are still here today is costing people a significant amount today. And nobody seems to want to even, you know, look at maybe righting that wrong slightly. And we're not saying, you know, we're going to be building a few thousand houses a year or anything, but we've got to start somewhere. So do we continue sitting here and saying, oh, it's too big, we can't do it? Or do we actually try and make a start? You know, because for every house we get, for every council house we get, it's one more person off that housing waiting list. And that's my focus, is that. I won't accept we can't do anything about it, it's too big, because we've got councils like Broxtowe, the Borough Council in Nottinghamshire, you know, a council similar to Barnsley, that's actively buying properties and turning them into council housing, building blocks of flats where veterans get first refusals. So it is doable by purchasing, you know, at discounted rates from developers. And it doesn't mean we suddenly have to fund an entire department, because an housing development will get built and we might take 20 houses off there, or, you know, 20 houses, 30 houses. Doesn't mean we suddenly need 50 staff to look after those. So you can increase the revenue expenditure as the amount of houses go up. So it's not one big implication for the revenue budget. It can be done, and there's grant funding as well. So it doesn't all have to be funded by debt. But obviously, the Labour cabinet decides to take on debt for, you know, other projects and stuff. So why is this any less? Why is this a no if we were going to go down that route? The 2 hours free parking. I mean, because I think there's a bit of misconception about why we're bringing this. The reason it was brought in was to increase footfall. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't benefit people, and I'm not saying, you know, not paying for your parking isn't a good thing. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, right, that through studies, historically, free parking has been shown to have a negligible impact on increasing footfall. We kind of have different perceptions and stuff, but it's the reason you brought it in is probably not going to be achieved. Whereas the big driver of footfall in a city centre is the retail offer. That's why we think there should be a proposal to actually help new businesses set up in the city centre. It's not a gimmick, right? That's actually going and, you know, similar to the council housing, buy some commercial properties and say, right, for 6 months you've got free rent. They'll probably be paying next to no, you know, business rates as well, depending on the rateable value. But let's get, you know, businesses in, let's get them set up, and, you know, let's actually, you know, improve the high street. And then once you have more businesses entering the city centre, the footfall will increase. And then we can revisit 2 hours free parking and stuff, because it might actually then improve it when there's actually something to come into the town centre for. And that's about the priorities. It's not just a little gimmick. And I accept, you know, the other opposition councillors and their position. That's always been their position. But in terms of Matthew Morley, Councillor Matthew Morley, you know, he was quoted as saying, you know, when they ended it last time, where it wasn't worth it and things like that, it had no impact and stuff. So you're now changing your tune now because there's an election on the horizon. In terms of the ridings as well, which Councillor Hemingway said we opposed, there's about 280 flats, give or take, right, in the Vico tower blocks. The council, from the initial proposals, is just saying to rebuild around 200. We don't even know if that's going to be all. The vast majority are going to be for commuters and not going to drive down that waiting list. So that's why we need something else. And it's not. Just the final point, Madam Mayor.
Time's up, Councillor
If council
Williamson.
tax has a detrimental effect, the 2 hours free parking will, because it's exactly the same amount. Thank you.
We will now take the proposed amendments to the budget to the vote. To clarify, this is to determine whether the amendments moved by Councillor Williamson should be included in the budget proposals moved by the leader and become the new substantive budget. I will now ask our Chief Legal Officer to take the recorded vote on the proposed amendments to the budget put forward by the Unity Group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I'll take the recorded vote in the normal way. I'll read out the name of the councillor. If you could indicate whether you wish to vote for the amendment, against the amendment, or whether you wish to abstain. Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Ali. Councillor Antcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Appleyard.
Against.
Councillor Ayoub. Councillor Bates. Councillor Byford. Councillor Carrington. Councillor Collins. Councillor Craig. Councillor Cummings. Councillor Farmer. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Forster. Councillor Fraser. Councillor Girt. Councillor Graham. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Haslam. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hemingway. Councillor Heptonstall. Councillor Hepworth. Councillor Isherwood. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Laura Jones. Councillor Keith. Councillor Khan. Councillor Law. Councillor Mayhew. Councillor Medford. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Morley. Councillor Andy Nichols. Councillor Deb Nichols. Councillor Page. Councillor Pickersgill. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Scott. Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sharp. Thank you. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Smith. Councillor Speak. Councillor Spate. Councillor Swift. Councillor Tennant. Councillor Tully. Councillor Walton. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Wilton. Madam Mayor, would you wish to vote? Against. And Madam Deputy Mayor? Against. Thank you. Just bear with us a second while we do the numbers.
Right. The numbers are 4, 6, against 42, abstain 6. So that is defeated. Councillor Speak, as leader of the Liberal Democrat group, I would now invite you to respond to the Cabinet's budget proposals and in doing so, move your proposed amendments to the budget, which has been circulated to members in advance of the meeting. You have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our Lib Dem amendment is very simple. We are cutting the jobs for the boys at the top of the council, investing in the basics that residents actually notice. While families worry about crime on their streets and damage to their cars from potholes, this council continues to pay out a small fortune in allowances for councillors and senior management costs at far higher than the public would like. So our budget does 3 things. First, we invest where people live. A £250,000 neighbourhood crime prevention fund to support safer communities, a £250,000 pothole repair fund to fix the roads residents use every day. Second, we make responsible savings, removing a senior office post, ending cabinet special responsibility allowances and political assistant costs. Delivering modern efficiency savings through smarter use of AI and technology. Less bureaucracy, more delivery. And third and most importantly, we begin putting right a historic wrong. The Labour Council took a swimming pool away from Nottingley. Our amendment starts the work of giving Nottingley its sports centre and swimming pool back, because we believe in investing in communities that have been overlooked for far too long. This is a balanced amendment. It cuts waste, invests in priorities and restores fairness across the district, and I formally move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Speak. Councillor Hayes, would you now wish to comment on the proposals and in doing so, second the proposed amendments to the budget as proposed by Councillor Speak? You have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I second the motion. It makes a clear choice, cut jobs from the boys at the top and invest in the basics residents actually care about, for safer streets, safer roads and proper facilities for our community. It starts putting all the rights in justice by beginning to work and give Nottingley its new swimming pool back. A balanced budget, sensible savings and investment where it matters most.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. I will now take questions or comments on Councillor Speak's proposed amendments to the budget. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, first of all, thanks for doing an amendment, but unfortunately I can't support it again. I've been fighting for a swimming pool in Ossett for the last 600 years, I think, but I've been told it's not going to happen. And it's really sad, in the fact is I'd support a Nottingham one, but that'd be disrespectful to the residents of Ossett and Gawthorpe and also our side of the city who've been fighting for a swimming pool for a long, long time. They've got a new one at Minstow, they've got a new one at Spire at Pontefract, and they've also got new facilities at Featherstone. I remember some time ago in this chamber, the cabinet member for Leisure and Sport told us, this side of the city, our side of the city, that go down to Dewsbury. Well, they didn't have one at Dewsbury now. So on that avenue, I can't support the amendment because it'd be letting down the people and residents of Ossett and Gawthorpe, not just Ossett and Gawthorpe, the whole side of my city, who have been let down by the Labour Council for not having any swimming facilities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Appleyard.
Thank you. Yes, I can't support this amendment either. I think it's very misleading to say that this is being funded by cutting jobs for the boys. When you're talking about back office functions, political assistants, they're not jobs for the boys. You're actually hitting hard-working people. And I can't believe that you'd actually come here and talk about job cuts when we've got cost of living crisis and things like that. With regards to the money to be spent on a feasibility study for the swimming pool sports centre in Nottingley, there was a study done, you know why it was closed many, many years ago. Since that new facility, and you've pointed many out, we've actually seen membership increase phenomenally year on year, including many people from from Ferrybridge and Nottingley. You've not put any detail in here, so you're going to pay for a feasibility, so where are you going to get the money from for revenue? You've not put any of that detail in, so it misleads, I think, your residents to say that you're going to get a leisure centre when you're not even thinking about how that would be paid for. So very much oppose this.
Councillor Pickersgill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two things really that concern me in relation to this. One is the statement, create a capital fund with revenue costs. So actually what you're going to do is you're going to spend some money up front, and then we're going to be paying it off for the next 20, 30 years. I think it's dishonest with people to say that. You borrow money to spend on something specific that you need. But
Councillor Sharp, will you stop shouting across the room, please?
Thank you. So,
Councillor Sharp, let Councillor Pickersgill carry on.
Right, saying that you can spend £250,000 on the basis of it's going to cost £45,000 a year for however many years into the future isn't being clear with people, to be honest, and I think you should have basically said we will find £250,000. You shouldn't have been saying we'll just borrow more money to spend on that. The second thing, which surprised me, is that you're wanting it in Nottingley. Because for the last few weeks, I seem to be seeing more of your faces in leaflets going out in Wakefield Rural. I think it's possibly there you want to be doing it. Thank you.
Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Appleyard has said most of what I wanted to say, but I did want to refer to the swimming pool because, yes, we did have a feasibility study some years ago which showed that the use at Nottingley and in my own ward, we had a pool that was closed in my ward, was significantly low. And the best way of meeting that need was by a new facility, which we actually provided. And as I understand it, since then, the footfall actually has gone up from Nottingley. Whereas before, it was extremely low. There was hardly anyone using that pool because it was in such a poor state, and most of the people were from Selby. So if you want to provide a new facility there, are you providing it for Selby people? And I'd also like to ask you, I notice in terms of your amendment, you don't make any comment on the percentage council tax that you would suggest as part of your budget. Maybe you'd like to answer that too. Thank you.
Is it a point of order?
Well, they don't need, it's a balanced budget. I mean, we get these arguments, but it's been signed off. You can't then just say, how would you pay for it when it is balanced? I think that's...
It has been signed off.
It's misleading, very misleading.
It's been signed off. Right? I just have. It's been signed off. Councillor Ahmed.
I was going to make that part. I thought you'd make it. I thought it would be hard for me to, but I'll defend the Liberal Democrats. So, you know, this actually shows that two cabinet members stood up and criticised an amendment from an opposition group for something that they should have known. So something that you should have known. That it says in here, and this is I'll do it openly. So either you're criticising the Chief Financial Officer's statement, or you have a lack of understanding of what the actual comment says here. And it quite clearly says the revenue feasibility study, because I had the same criticism, I'm going to be honest with you. When I read it, I thought, are you really planning to do that? And the feasibility study is what it says, and they've made and allocated the money for the feasibility study within there, which would say, yes, it's feasible or it's not feasible, and the cost implications would then come at a later budget, which would then be determined, which they exactly know the answers. They've been told not to vote for it, which is easy to stand up and say, we've been told not to vote for these lots budget. Even if we agreed with it, we'll pretend later on and come to you, you know, we agreed with you. We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to. My mum told me not to do it. Right, so the fact that this actually, as I was reading it, I think it's quite clever the way you've done it. I like it. So it's quite clever. And you've challenged a lot of things on there, you know, and you've been able to do it. And the feasibility study does give you a good election platform there to be able to do it. And it's clever. Everyone does it. It's a proper budget, but it is a shameful shame on the two councillors from the cabinet that stood up to criticise it, because they haven't read the entire thing, which is wrong. And I'm tempted to support the amendment.
Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, it's just absolutely hypocritical when we've got people on the opposite benches that have literally come up with zero ideas themselves, even if it's for their own wards, to be able to make their residents' lives better in their budget. No ideas, going on about reform, reform, reform. What are you even talking about? You're literally making people poorer and criticising other opposition parties. They're criticising other opposition parties for coming up with actual ideas. Now, whether you agree with them or not, and personally, I don't agree with cancelling the free parking, so I abstained from the vote. I want leisure facilities in my ward. We don't have any, so I can't support this, but I'm not sitting here like literally criticising people for coming up with ideas. I think you need to just go back to the drawing board and actually come up with some ideas before you criticise other people. And every single budget has been robustly calculated and agreed for by the Section 151 officer of this council. I think you all forget that. You just want to have a pop for the sake of having a pop.
Councillor Byford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, this is an amendment to the budget proposals put forward by the Labour group, is that correct? Correct. Right. So it's been balanced based on it's an amendment to our proposals. And our proposals show a council tax increase. And this is an amendment, and nowhere in the amendment does it say you are not accepting our council tax proposed increase. All that it does is raise three valid points from your point of view, which I'm not going to argue with, but the question was raised, are you still proposing a 4.99% council tax increase plus this? Thank you.
Can I just come in before we go on to the next speaker, Madam Mayor, if that's okay? I have just checked with the Section 151 officer. There is no amendment to the proposal for 4.99% council tax, which includes the 2% social care. So these are other amendments to the budget.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I think that were a bit of a pointless question, really, because it would have to be listed in here. You can't just like steamrail a lower council tax rise, right? It's been set out. And the thing is, it is balanced. Because do you know that bit after the few points at the top, which gives various costings, it then says funded by, and the bottom number is 336,000, and the top number, the expenditure, is 336,000.
Councillor Williamson, we've clarified all these points.
Well, I just think some people need it really spelling out really clearly, that's all, Madam Mayor. Because...
we've clarified them.
Well, do I still not get to speak?
Got anything else to say?
Yeah, I can think of a few things, Madam Mayor. That's all. I think it's just really easy when you know which way you've got to vote, just taking pot shots at everybody else. And I think you just need to be a bit more responsible, because you're all right sitting there in debate saying, oh, well, opposition councillors attack us and have a go and stuff, and then you just do it back anyway. So I think you just need to reflect on that a little bit. It is balanced.
Before taking the proposed amendments to the budget to the vote, Councillor Speak, as mover, would you like to sum up?
I'll just do a short sum up. I think a lot of the opposition are coming at me, but you've got to remember that it's been signed off legally by your finance department, and it's really, really sad that we constantly have to come into this chamber and try and get something for our ward, you know, something back. You go around and look round it, it's shocking, absolutely shocking. And all we can do is what our residents want us to do, and that is fight for better facilities in our ward.
We will now take the proposed amendments to the budget to the vote. To clarify, this is to determine whether the amendments moved by Councillor Speak should be included in the Cabinet's budget proposals. I will now ask our Chief Legal Officer to take a recorded vote on the proposed amendment to the budget put forward by the Liberal Democrat group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I think you understand the procedure now. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstain on the Liberal Democrat amendment. Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Ali. Councillor Antcliffe. Councillor Appleyard. Councillor Ayoub. Councillor Bates. Councillor Byford. Councillor Carrington. Councillor Collins. Councillor Craig. Councillor Cummings. Councillor Farmer. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Forster. Councillor Fraser. Councillor Girt. Councillor Graham. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Haslam. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hemingway. Councillor Heptonstall. Councillor Hepworth. Councillor Isherwood. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Laura Jones. Councillor Keith. Councillor Khan. Councillor Law. Councillor Mayhew. Councillor Medford. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Morley. Councillor Andy Nichols. Councillor Deb Nichols. Councillor Page. Councillor Pickersgill. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Scott. Councillor Sharp. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Smith. Councillor Speak. Councillor Spate. Councillor Swift. Councillor Tennant. Councillor Tully. Councillor Walton. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Wilton. Madam Mayor. Against. And Madam Deputy Mayor. Against. Thank you.
For, 3 votes. Against, 44. Abstain, 7. That is defeated. The proposed budget amendments have both fallen, and we can now consider the original budget as proposed by Councillor Jeffrey, which is set out in the agenda. Does any member wish to ask a question or comment on the original budget? May I remind members that speeches must be directed to the question under discussion or to a personal explanation or point of order. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, colleagues in all political parties, and most importantly, the residents of Wakefield District, watching from the gallery and from home as well. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Leader of the Council for her budget speech today. Seems like she has done a great advertisement for Reform UK. I thought you would have learned some lesson from Gorton and Dunton. I stand here today to speak on behalf of the thousands of residents who have been ignored for far too long. We have reviewed the revenue budget today in front of us, and my conclusion is simple. This budget is beyond repair. It is a document of such profound incompetence and institutional arrogance that is not worthy of a single amendment. So you cannot put a fresh coat of paint on a building with no foundations. Let's look at the cold, hard facts you try to hide in your small print. You told our residents that the coffers are empty and that you must raise council tax by the maximum of 4.99%. But we see a £6.4 million windfall from pension over contribution of this council. You found over £6.4 million. But instead of giving the taxpayer a break during this cost of living crisis, you decided to keep the cash and hike the tax anyway. You claim adult social care is your priority. If that's true, why you are sitting on £0.2 million unspent up to November this year? You haven't even spent the money you already have, but yet you're demanding a massive increase in the coming year. This isn't investment. It is a confession that you don't know how to run the service. And while our residents struggle, the council protects its own. The inflation now sits at 3%. You have the audacity to vote yourself a 3.5% of pay rise. You're putting yourself above the rate of inflation, while the ordinary small business owners in the riding and some self-employed in this district are sinking below it. You are giving no support to the backbone of our economy in our community while you pad your own pockets. Look at this bold destruction of the ridings. You have decided to knock down a shopping centre without a proper plan, consultation with the 750 residents living in those tower flats. You have admitted this scheme will result in a net loss for the council in the next 3-4 years. But you are digging a financial black hole, nevertheless, for our children to fall into, simply to satisfy your vanity. Madam Mayor, enough is enough. For over half a century, this district has been treated as a private fiefdom of Labour Party. You have become tone deaf to the struggle of the great city and 5 towns. As a Reform UK councillor, I will not offer an alternative budget to this chamber today because this chamber has stopped listening to the people of Wakefield. But make no mistakes, there will be an alternative budget coming after May the 7th, the day the outlaw election will take place. On that day, the people of Wakefield will write it for a change. They will write it for themselves. They will vote for common sense. They will vote for transparency and accountability. And they will vote for a council that really respects their hard-earned cash. Until then, you should hang your heads in shame. I recommend this budget to be rejected in its own entirety.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're here today because people across our communities are feeling the strain, not just from rising bills and the cost of living crisis, but from decisions made at the top of Wakefield Council that simply do not reflect the reality residents are living with. Year after year, hard-working families are being asked to pay more in council tax. And year after year, many are asking the same fair question, what are we getting in return? Let me be clear, nobody denies that local government finances are under pressure. Councils across the country have faced difficult settlements and rising demand for services, but leadership is measured not when times are easy, but when choices are hard. And too often, Wakefield Council has failed that test. Residents are seeing streets that are not as clean as what they should be, potholes that linger for months, delays in planning and local services, concerns about transparency and value for money, and most recently, their loved ones turfed out of their care home at end of life for no reason. Yet, despite these concerns, council tax continues to rise. For many households, this is not an abstract policy debate. This is about whether they can afford their weekly shop, whether pensioners can heat their homes, whether young families can stay afloat. When council tax goes up faster than people's incomes, it hits real people in very real ways. What frustrates residents most is the sense of imbalance. People understand that services must be funded. They understand that social care costs are rising. What they struggle to accept is the feeling that efficiencies have not been fully exhausted before reaching once again into the taxpayers' pockets. Where is the clear evidence of waste reduction? Where is the visible improvement in frontline services? Where is the accountability residents deserve? A council that asks for more must also show more openness, more discipline with public money and more focus on the basics that matter to residents every single day. This is not about scoring political points, it's about trust. So that trust that when bills go up, services will improve. Trust that every pound taken from residents is treated with utter respect. Trust that difficult decisions are being matched with serious efforts to reform and modernise how the council operates. Wakefield is a proud district with hard-working people who contribute enormously to our local economy and community life. They deserve a council that matches their efforts, a council that listens and prioritises ruthlessly and that proves it is delivering value before demanding more. The opportunity to seek clarification was available early as a year ago to every single one of you, as you are the controlling group. But no questions were raised and you chose not to do so. You were advised to proceed with the maximum council tax rise and did so without questioning the recommendation. Literally 0 questions, 0 vision and nothing left in the tank. You're all tired now, aren't you? Because you're all talking about reform and reform doesn't stay out of your mouths. So today the message is simple. Residents are willing to play their part, but they expect that Wakefield Council needs to do the same. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, we're just going to say, Madam Mayor, that obviously I won't be voting for this, but I found it interesting through his earlier discussions that you kept saying, you know, why don't other groups bring an alternative, you know, if you can do anything any better, and obviously we did, and, you know, to ease the burden on us residents, but you voted it down, so I won't be voting for the second year running now for another maximum rising council tax at all. And I just want to pick up on what Councillor Hemingway said during, while he was seconding the budget proposals. He said lowering council tax would lead to making more staff redundant in the future, but just in case you don't remember, that's why I voted against the budget last year and why I'm sat here now is because you basically, the Cabinet lied to your own councillors last year about the scale of job cuts, right? 250, right? So regardless, you're going to cut jobs anyway, so I just think that needs placing on the record. But I won't be voting for this. And I hope every resident throughout the district knows that you voted down a decent amendment to lower their bills, right? Just as we're going into the elections.
Councillor Tully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say that this today has been one of the saddest days of my life. I've spent 15 years in this same chair, number 94. I feel like I'm chained to this like Ben Howard chained to his oar. And I moved occasionally to let my old mucker, Alan Wassell, sit here when he weren't very well. And I've never sought high office, never been offered it, but that's another story. But just to do what I thought were right for the people that sent me from my ward. And I've resigned from the Labour Party today. And I'll tell you why. I've resigned for one reason, because when I look at the situation, I had the, call it what you like, to call out Starmer's poor judgment on appointing Mandelson. And as a result of that, I've been removed from the list of Labour candidates for May, so they've left me with no alternative other than to do what I've done. I don't want to dwell anymore on that. That is for another day. So let's talk about why we're here today then and why we're expected to vote this budget. Why would we want to vote for a budget that's making people poorer? Because I'll tell you this now, I don't blame my colleagues here, and I've spent more times than many, and nobody knows about my commitment to this party and attacking people in opposition for years and years and years because it was all their fault. We're 2 years now into this new government, and we are still expected, it's baked in, 4.99% as if it doesn't matter. And I didn't want to come here today to oppose my, I wouldn't say ex-party, then the party that I've spent all my adult life in. But I'll tell you this now, I would ask my colleagues today if they need to vote for a 4.99% increase. Hold your nose if you do, but put the blame where it firmly lies. Reeves, the other people in national government, let councils down like this. There's no reason why our base budgets couldn't have been increased 2 years into a government, and they failed to do it. And I tell you this now, I ain't been coming here to keep hammering our people, the working poor as I see them. And I just think it's appalling when we've got the opportunity to try for a change with a new government to try to assist us with base budgets. This government has let us down, and we've been let down even more by our members of parliament that represent this area that I'm not convinced have moved a finger to try to get us any more budget, base budget within this council. I don't blame, as I've said in here, I don't blame any of my colleagues.
Can we speak to the amendment, the budget, please? Sorry.
I'm speaking to the budget. I'm speaking to the budget because I don't blame any of my colleagues, and I'll just tell you where the blame lies. But if I were relying on the likes of Cooper, Lightwood and Bottrell to put in a case for me, I'm glad I'm not locked up in jail. That's all I would have said to them. Because we also need to take in cognizance today that as we sit here today, there's a war raging across the Middle East, and there's been a war raging across Europe. And we're talking about 4.9% as if it don't, well, I'm suggesting it don't really matter. But by end of this week, petrol could be £20 a gallon. And it totally takes out and wipes out anything that we're trying to do. And I'll tell you this now. We are seeing people in our communities no better off, not able to make ends meet. I'm talking about ordinary people that get up and go to work every morning. And when I was 19, 20-year-old, I'd got a mortgage. And I could save a few quid. And I could take my kids to the seaside. And we can't do it, and we can't keep piling on top of our people more and more and more costs with our budget. And that's why I cannot vote. I am not going to vote for this budget. It probably makes it a little bit easier because as from 9:30 this morning, I ain't a Labour Party member, so it doesn't really make any difference to me as an individual. But on a point of principle, we need to put the blame where it firmly lies. And I will just say this in conclusion. I take cognizance to what the Liberal Democrats have said in their amendment about
5 minutes,
about in their
Councillor
swimming
Tully.
pool. But I will say this. If them councils that used to represent Nottingley had done half the work I'd done to maintain a swimming pool at Minthorpe, there had probably been still 3 Labour councils representing Nottingley in this council chamber.
Thank you.
I will not
Thank
support
you.
this budget.
Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mayor. I think Councillor Tully's been reading my notes because he took all of my points. But totally can understand where Steve's coming from as someone who's recently left the Labour Party myself. I sat here for many years voting for council tax rises, and like a lot of my ex-colleagues, blamed the Conservative government and said, well, we're doing this because they're not giving us a proper settlement. Last year was one of the hardest votes, and I know it was for everyone. 2 Labour colleagues left the party, and I know nobody else wanted to vote for that, for cuts. But I think I sort of justified it in my own head as, oh, the government's only been in a year, they do need time to sort out the mess, etc. But as Steve said, we're 2 years in now, and that we're saying there's a severe financial challenge, and we're still raising council tax. And I don't believe when we say we're protecting frontline services, I just don't believe that's the case. If you ask anybody out there, the trees aren't getting cut as much as they used to, the gullies aren't being emptied nowhere near as much as they used to, and it's causing more and more problems. So I think they are getting a much worse deal, and they're paying more for it. It really annoys me that we're supposed to be sat here and thanking the district's MPs for an extra £4 million one-off payment and pretend that they've done everything they can to push for this. I mean, that to me is just absolutely ridiculous. I've sat there myself in a meeting with 3 of the district's MPs, and me and my ex-cabinet colleagues mentioned, you know, winter fuel allowance and how it's an absolute disgrace, you need to reverse it. And all they spoke about was how we can defeat reform next May. We mentioned disability cuts and how we think that's disgraceful. They said, okay, but what about reform? What can we do to defeat reform? Even WASPy women, you've betrayed them, this is disgusting. It was always back to reforms, all he cared about. I would like to see people calling that out more. I'm glad Steve's called it out today. I think the public want to see. It's great to call it out behind closed doors, but let's not pretend that they're listening. They're really not. That £4 million one-off payment was coming no matter what. They're not doing anything. They don't care. They're whipped not to care. And I absolutely will not be supporting this budget based on all of the above. Thank you.
Councillor Isherwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall be supporting this budget today because I think it's a very good budget. I think it's been well thought out, and I think it's a budget for families, children and young people. We've got a controllable budget increase of 3.9 million to take forward. We've also been given additional grants by the government of 1.83 million, and as the leaders already stated, we're making available more money for 16 to 18 training, childcare provision, the Aspire, free Aspire for young people, 16 to 24. What is there to complain about with that? Absolutely brilliant news for young people. But on top of that, we've also got £2 million, which we are going to use to make sure that every child that attends a state-funded LA or academy school from the Wakefield district will receive a voucher either for £50 for secondary educated children or £30 for primary. That's £2 million that is being spent on the children of our district. And I think that's something that is something we should all be proud of. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Morley.
Yeah, I rise to support this budget, Madam Mayor. It's what we're doing across the district, listening to the people of the Wakefield district, supporting our young people and school children with uniform provision, supporting people's comments when it's about the highways, putting additional money into highways, putting additional money into antisocial behaviour with extra policing, looking after old people. It's what we're doing, what we've always done on this side of the council chambers, look after the residents of this district. But I do have to take exception when Councillor Harvey stands up there and starts going on about budgets and one thing or another. You can't bother to present an alternative budget, Councillor Harvey. But we've got a taste of things to come here with reform. Obviously, Councillor Harvey's down here, Councillor Farmer's up there. They can't even be in the same room together, really, half the time. They might sit together. So it's division and split already that we've got. Then we've got the fantasy budget of the independent and the Conservatives. Where's that today, Madam Mayor? Where's that, Madam Mayor? And then we've also got Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sharp with a ChatGPT speech. Madam Mayor, I suppose.
Not shout across if we've got a point of order to make.
Will you please not shout across the council chamber? If you've got a point of order, will you please put your hand up? And can we keep the personal insults out? Thank you. Have you finished, Councillor Morley? Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question, please, about procedure?
You've spoken already, Councillor
It's not
Graham.
about the debate, it's a point of order. I thought we said that you're not to stand up when you stand up.
Are you doing point of order, Councillor Keith?
Mayor, it's me. I'm asking for a point of order.
Right, what's your point of order?
Didn't in September we say when you stand up, everybody remains seated? Everyone's just stood. What's going on? Can you just clarify that rule for me?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the rules do technically say that when the Mayor is standing, everybody else needs to be quiet and sit down. The purpose of using that rule is to make sure that the situation that's arising at the time stops and everybody does sit down and behave according to the rules. So, in a sense, it makes very little difference, but technically you are correct.
Thank you. Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well. I think the opposition party have proved that you don't have to have a 4.99% budget, 3.5% they've gone down to. So there is areas where your budget can go down to 3.5%. What I do find incredible is that over the last, maybe I've been here 12 years, this is my 12th budget, and it's the Conservative group, always the Conservative Party that were at fault with the 4.99%. We've had that. I agree with you, Councillor Hemingway, 14 years, of chaos. But you're wrong on that point. It's 16 years of absolute chaos. We all went out campaigning, and your government promised it'd be change. There's no change at all. I mean, look, even your officers are preparing for the future, aren't they? I mean, obviously it reminds me of which part I'm in, but, you know, unfortunately, it's always the residents that lose out. And to be fair, it's complete, utter chaos. It's absolute chaos. Full respect to Councillor Tulloch there. He's never, ever gone with the flow. He's actually said the way it should be. And there's a lot of people over there feel the same way behind the doors and stuff, but won't say it here. And you talk about opposition parties, don't you, Councillor? Anyway, there's nearly half your opposition of your Labour Party that are here now, sat over here, objecting to what you've done over the last X number of years. 4.99%, it's another kick in the teeth for the residents of Ossett Gawthorpe, the people I really do care about. And I think it's, over the years, there's a lot of people in this chamber that really, really do care about the residents. Something's got to change. I don't know what, but something has to change for the benefit of our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Roberts.
It won't be a surprise. I'm not supporting this budget either. I want to support the amendment and the amended budget, and I gave my comments on that. Last year, I voted in favour of the Labour budget because there was no alternative to vote for. This year there was, so that's where I'm placing my vote and everything like that. But again, when we went out to election, it was about change, it was about making different choices, it was about alternative thinking. It is more of the same. So where is the difference between red and blue? And when I was in the Labour Party as a local councillor, I was sick and tired of defending the Westminster decisions and being basically collateral damage. You know, and how long is that going to go on for? You know, how long, are you guys going to do the damage control? And where is the acquisition? And to that, from within. I would also ask, in the opening speeches from the leader and deputy leader, they mentioned about how they've had some wins in terms of what they've got from Westminster. Could we have some specifics on that and what they are and how that has, benefited the pockets of our residents and put money back in that, to them and ease the cost of living crisis? Because I certainly haven't felt it. I don't think my residents have either. So that's my comments on that. Thank you.
Councillor Gert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like my colleague, Councillor Roberts, if you remember, last year I also voted to support your budget because there wasn't an alternative. And at the time I was the leader of the Liberal Democrats and I tried to do an alternative budget and failed. This year there has been an alternative put forward that would help our residents. And this is the point, you can't keep, like Councillor Tully said, you can't just keep piling it on the residents. They're struggling. I'm not the only councillor here, I'm looking at two councillors across the way that also work in food banks. We see it every day. We see them struggling. This is working families coming in and having to use food banks. You can't keep piling it on by the maximum. You just can't keep doing it. The whole point of having reserves is that you use them in a rainy day. It's torrential rain now. When are you going to use them? You know? And the sad thing is, by doing this, I believe you've handed the election to Reform. I do. And I'm looking across the way, and there's a lot of good people sat over there. I might be on this side of it, you know, but there's a lot of good people over there that are going to lose their seats. All because you've boosted it by the maximum. And last point I'd like to make to Steve, I'd just like to correct you, Steve. And again, I'm here defending the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats didn't close the swimming pool at Nottingley. That was Labour. Yeah. So we weren't even around to fight for it, keeping it open. So anyway, I think you've made a huge mistake.
Councillor Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The Liberal Democrats, of course, supported the Tories who gave us austerity. So let's go back to those times. Let's look at this 4.99%. It's 2.99% rise in the council tax and 2% for social care. That's effectively what it is. If we go back to those times, when we're blaming people and where all this started, it started with the coalition government, with Cameron and Osborne, who gave us £2 million worth of work and £1 million to do it with. And then up came that other bloke from Pickles from Bradford, who froze the council tax. And we said at the time, it's all right freezing anything, and it makes an impact on people's living wage and living circumstances. But it's when you come to thaw it out that it causes the problem. And this is the problem. We've never been able to do it. And so consequently, it does exactly what Councillor Hemingway said. If you take reserves, what you're going to do to make up that money next year, it compounds the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. It buys you 1 year. And then next year, you have no reserves to put towards the spending budgets. So you then have to put your thing up. Just as freezing a council tax, when it comes to thaw it out, you've got to put it up a lot more. And so we've never gone to that stage. We've stayed within the spending budgets that we've done. And so it is wrong to use reserves. It is wrong to sort of, as we discussed last week, Steve, at Fire Authority, I say, last week at Fire Authority, we discussed exactly the same budget with some Tories from Bradford, did we not? And who wanted us to use and save coppers off of the amount of money that we were going to levy on people, but to use those reserves in a one-off time. So consequently, next year's, when there ain't no reserves and there's no to chip in the pot, you've nothing to play with. So I support the budget.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, you've already spoken on it, sorry. What's your point of order?
Councillor Morley has mentioned my name, so I have a right to reply.
No, you've already spoke.
That's exactly, because my name was mentioned. How can they not do?
Did you say Councillor Ahmed? Yeah. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be opposing, as I have done for the last 20 years in the council chamber, I'll be opposing the increase on council tax. I've said this before a number of years, and I'll give some examples as well. I don't think I can go back to the public in South Ward, whether that's Kettleford, Bagbrigg, Bellevue, Sandal or Portobello, and say to them that I sat in the council chamber and voted for an increase of their council tax, which won't be 5% when it's finished, it will be around 10%. And that is, and I've said this a number of years, and I said this last year as well, that is on top of other costs that are rising for local residents, which include rising broadband costs, mortgages that have just about started to drop but the mortgage companies are not offering the deals that they should be doing. So actually people are paying more. On average, on a £100,000 house, a person is paying around £150 more a month for the mortgage. So, you know, we can shake our heads because we might not have a mortgage, but that's what it's costing people. Petrol costs more today. Household bills cost more today. Food prices are still going up. They can lie and say that inflation isn't. They're all going up. They've been going up since the Conservatives have been in power, so I'm not justifying that. But today, and as I said in the last council meeting, some of you need to ask your friends in the Labour Party, which year was Keir Starmer talking about when he said that they would have frozen council tax? Which fiscal year was he talking about in 2023 when he said that he would freeze council tax? And he said it's something like not a penny more. So we're waiting for that year because it was supposed to have been done last year. So is it this year or the following year? The council, and I think some responsibility does lie with you. You can blame the government. The governments have always been to blame, but your MPs will be sat here when you've lost your seats. They'll be sat there on their £100,000 a year when most of you have lost your seats. And I don't mean that in dishonourable. I think the majority of councillors that I meet in the council chamber are here, they're honourable, they're trying to do their best. Most of you, not all of you. But that you will suffer the consequences like the Conservatives did. When we go on the doorstep, people will just overlook what you've done and they will be focused on what your MPs and everybody's done. That's what's going to happen. And your MPs had the right, there's two of them in cabinet. One of them in one of the most senior posts you can have, Yvette Cooper. You know, you'll suffer the consequences. This is too much, but there's choices that you've made. And I think other councillors have mentioned the ridings. I think that's an unforced error. I think it was, I don't know why you've done it. Maybe it was, in private, it was maybe a good idea and it sounded good. It would have been a big election win. There's other money that's being wasted as well that people are talking about, which we've mentioned. And all them things are unforced errors from the council. So the council, which is controlled by yourselves, whether it be Sandal Magna, the swimming pools, the Ryan homes, all the things that Councillor Williamson and others have mentioned or we've mentioned over the years are as a result of the council. They are the choices the council makes. And people punish the councillors. They don't punish the MPs. They'll sit there comfortably, and sadly, most of you will lose your seats. And I don't think that, do I think for that's for the benefit of Wakefield? I don't know. The proof is in the pudding, and it will know whoever comes after that, whether they deliver what they've done or whether they do that. But I think it's important to, first of all, acknowledge, like I have done over the years, the mistakes of the government, call out, just say, look, this is wrong. You know, they'll send you a letter and tell you off. I've got them. I've told them to get lost. We stood openly said it in front of you here in this council chamber, openly criticised the Conservative government on a number of occasions when they got things wrong. When they got it right, they got it right. But none of you will do that. Councillor Tully's done that. I'm sorry, there's 3 or 4 other councillors that have walked across the floor. But if you did that, I think that would show a respect and integrity. It would show respect and integrity in there. So that's what I think you are to blame. Your government's to blame more, but you will hold the can. You'll be left holding the can.
Thank you, colleagues. And that concludes the debate on the proposed budget. Sorry? I never saw you. Councillor Bates, sorry.
I just want to say that you're going to vote for this budget, and the outcome's going to be a lot of councillors who I respect as hard-working, whether I agree with them or not, doesn't matter. They're dedicated, and I appreciate that. And I've never attacked any one of you. But just the same as last year, we're going to have a maximum rise, and it's all been said, and efficiencies and all that, but it's going to cost you dearly in the election. And if you remember last year, and I don't betray what was offered behind closed doors, but when you disciplined me, a lot of you agreed with me. And all I asked you to do was agree that this budget was an austerity budget brought on by Starmer's broken promises. But you won't say that in public. And this year, you're not doing it again, and it's going to cost you. So, you know, And I don't understand why. And I understand because Steve Tully's a colleague of mine, and I know the turmoil he's gone through since the last budget. It's not easy after 50 years serving the Labour Party, and he did serve this council for 15 years, and I think he deserves some praise for that. But he stood up and been counted. And the trouble is, when you do that in the Labour group, you end up on this side of the chamber. So, and you've done it again this year. You will not stand up and speak. Represent your constituents, your residents. And it was said at the budget meeting last year, your residents come first, party comes second. You pander to the party's whim, and they don't care about you. I think they've shown that in spades. So it'll be sayonara come May, and I find that regrettable, I really do, because the alternative is not good. But I won't be supporting this budget anyway, so I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, colleagues, and that concludes the debate of the proposed budget. Councillor Jeffrey, as mover of the Cabinet recommendations, you now have the right to reply to the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do commend the opposition, the official opposition, for putting a budget forward. Even though we don't agree with what some of you said, there was an opposition budget, so and that's what your role is. I don't agree with this perception that you're all putting out that we don't care about our residents. Obviously we do. We work day in and day out, evenings, and also, Councillor Harvey, I think what you said in your tirade, that we'd given ourselves a 3.5 rise. Well, that just was incorrect information again from you. I don't know why you said that, but it's not true. But what we've put forward as this budget is a sensible budget, the way forward to protect this council going forward, whoever is in control of it. I can just imagine if we'd have gone for 2%, and then the opposition come in and say we'd left the council in a mess. But we're fighting to keep control of this council, and we shall do. And all the doom and gloom that you said about the fact that we've put the council tax up every year, the consultation from residents doesn't show that that's a real issue at all. What they want to do, they want to see the potholes filled in and services and all the things that Margaret has raised that we're doing for families. So I think we've put a proper budget forward, the budget for the people of this district, as I said earlier, and I don't agree with the fact that you think that we don't care. We're being sensible and we're being right way forward. As Charlie said, if we had put the council tax down low, there won't be any money for next year and we'd be criticised again. So I support this budget and I've put it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. We will now take the vote on agenda items 6 and 7, the revenue budget and council tax proposals, capital and investment strategy, capital programme and treasury management strategy reports. I will now ask our Chief Legal Officer to take the recorded vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Same procedure as before, please. Voting on the substantive budget, Councillor Ahmed. Yes. Councillor Ali. Councillor Antcliffe. Councillor Appleyard. Councillor Ayoub. Councillor Bates. Councillor Byford. Councillor Carrington. Councillor Collins. Councillor Craig. Councillor Cummings. Councillor Farmer. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Forster. Councillor Fraser. Councillor Girt. Councillor Graham. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Haslam. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hemingway. Councillor Heptonstall. Councillor Hepworth. Councillor Isherwood. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Laura Jones. Councillor Keith. Councillor Khan. Councillor Law. Councillor Mayhew. Councillor Medford, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Morley, Councillor Andy Nichols, Councillor Deb Nichols, Councillor Page, Councillor Pickersgill, Councillor Pritchard, Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Scott, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Smith, Councillor Speak, Councillor Spate, Councillor Swift, Councillor Tennant, Councillor Tully, Councillor Walton, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Wilton, Madam Mayor and Madam Deputy Mayor. 4. Thank you.
For, 42 votes. Against, 12. Abstentions, 0. That is carried. Thank you. And that, colleagues, was the last item on the agenda. Don't all start getting up yet. Thank you all for your attendance. Can I remind members that the next meeting of Council will be held on the 18th of March 2026. I now declare the Council meeting closed.
Ladies and gentlemen, Council members, please be